Welcome back to part 4 on how to install a bike from scratch. In this last episode, we're going to install what you touch and feel, so that's the saddle, the pedals, and your grips, adjust your cockpit, including your suspension, and get the bike ready for that maiden ride that you can't wait for anymore. So let's get to it. Installation of the pedals is fairly straightforward. You just put a little bit of grease here on the threads, identify which one is left, which one is right, right being the drive side. And if you have one of these pedal washers provided by the crank manufacturer, you might want to use it. It's usually useful when your pedal axle looks like this, what you see here on the flats. The non-drive side thread is reversed. However, there is a rule of thumb easy to apply for both pedals. By the way, for these flat pedals, I'm going to use a 15mm wrench. Turn your axle towards the front of the bike, and that's how you tighten it. This is true on both sides of the bike, both left and right. Other pedals like this use an 8mm Allen key to install. Same thing, rotate towards the front, and in this case, you're going to reach out from the inside of the pedal and just tighten them up to the same 40 Nm. If you're using carbon cranks and you use what's called the crank arm boots or guards like this, remember to install them first on the cranks before you install your pedal. If you're new to this or you're trying to develop new skills, I would highly recommend using flat pedals. I use clipless, or I'm clipped in only when racing cross country. I find them to be a bit more efficient when climbing, but this was an acquired taste, and even today when I'm going out for fun or again trying new areas, I would prefer to have the flat pedals with me. Installation of the saddle is pretty simple, and if you have manufacturers with a good sense of humor, they're even gonna mention here which way is forward for your saddle. Put a bit of grease on the saddle rails just to prevent noises coming from there. And the installation is usually fairly self-explanatory. It kind of differs from manufacturer to manufacturer. To start with, I would install the saddle right in the middle of the rail and use the manufacturer's torque specs to make that happen. If you decide to go for a carbon rail saddle, remember that the manufacturer might have very specific requirements for the installation. I'll definitely follow those. With the bike on the ground, orient your saddle parallel to the ground, or if you have one of these indicators for angle, just put it at 0 for now. And one last thing here when shopping for a saddle, if you see the word I-beam anywhere in there in the description, it refers to this I-beam rail. You see it here on the saddle, so it's very different than what you're used to see. And the saddle and the seat post has to be purchased as a set. Saddle height is very important and it's something you're going to adjust over time, but a good starting point is with the crank in line with your seat post, put your heel on the pedal and raise the saddle until your knee is locked in that position. That way, when you put the ball of your foot over the pedal, so normal pedaling position, you're going to have that slight bend in your knee. Fine-tune your saddle height after that, but this is a very good starting point. The last point of contact with the bike is the handlebars and the grips. And if you remember from part 2, we have some unfinished business right here at the headset, which is not tightened properly yet. I left this close to the end because it's best done with the bike on the floor, but first let's adjust the handlebar. Most mountain bike handlebars provide a rise and a slight backwards angle or back sweep. That means that you have to adjust this angle of the handlebar when tightening the stem. Kind of a rule of thumb when looking from the side is to have this part here where the grips get installed, to have that parallel to the ground. For me, I find that position and then I rotate the bar slightly forward. So the tips here will be slightly up. That will give you a good starting point for refining this angle of the handlebars. Obviously, you make that adjustment with these bolts loosened up. And once you're happy with the position of the bar, then you're going to have to tighten it. And the maximum torque is usually specified either here on the plate or somewhere on the stem Maximum torque for carbon handlebars is, as usual, 5 Newton meters. So grab your torque wrench and start tightening. There is a proper way of doing this, and that is crisscross or in diagonal. So imagine 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be the order of tightening these bolts to that 5 Newton meters. Next, we're going to finish adjusting the headset, and for that just loosen up this top cap bolt and also the 2 bolts here on the stem. As soon as you do that, you will be able to move your handlebar freely relative to the front wheel. Start by tightening the bolt on this top cap, and I would tighten it to snug and then back it out 1/8 of a turn. Next, align your bar properly with the front wheel because you don't want it crooked. And once you're happy with that, just take your Allen key and start tightening the bolts on the stem. These 2 bolts are actually the ones that are holding your stem and handlebar attached to the steerer. The torque value needed here is usually mentioned on the stem, and they are specific to each manufacturer. To make sure that you don't have any play here in the headset, just grab your front brake and then put your hand like this around the top bearing and just rock your bike back and forth. As you do that, you shouldn't feel any movement here on the top bearing, and if you don't and the handlebar is moving nice and freely, you are good to go. Time to install your grips, and there are usually 2 big types, lock-on, and these are foam or silicone. Foam or silicone, they slide right over the handlebar, and then you have a bar plug or a bar end. The lock-on type might have 1 or 2 of these collars. I prefer these ones that only have 1. They are strong or stable enough for me. And if you have 2 collars, 1 on each end, you're most probably going to have to use one of these bar plugs as well. Lever position can make a big difference in your safety and performance on the bike. So loosen up the bar clamp, and the first thing you want to do is to adjust how far out is your lever going to be. These are meant to be used with 1 finger. So for maximum leverage, you want your finger to sit somewhere here close to the end of the lever. Lever reach is how far from the bar is your lever in the resting position. These XT brakes have the adjustment right here. Other brakes provide an adjustment screw. Use an Allen key usually to adjust it either through here or from the other side. The way I set them up is so in this relaxed position, my first joint of my braking finger just reaches the lever. So when I start braking, I use this middle part of my finger to do that. Also make sure that when you squeeze your lever to the max, you're not going to be hurting your knuckles of the other fingers, and definitely you don't want this to go all the way down to the handlebar. Finally, you would adjust the angle of the brake on the handlebar, and you are going to be aiming for a straight wrist over here. So in your preferred riding position, whether that's standing or seated, just adjust this up and down just to match your preferred style. You don't want it too far down or too far up, as they would not provide a proper position for your hand. If you cannot test that out yet, just adjust it at 45 degrees to the ground as a good starting point for this adjustment. The only thing different here on the shifter side would be the position of them relative to your brakes in case you have them integrated like this. Shimano allows you to tilt them up and down a little bit and also bring them in and out. If you have separate bar clamps for the 2 controls, you will have to test the bar clamp of the shifter on each side of the brake and see which position gives you a better reach for the shifter levers. Tighten the bar clamps to 5 Newton meters again, or a better way of looking at it, tighten them until they stop moving and then give it another 1/8 of a turn. That way, if you crash, the levers will still be able to move up and down instead of breaking or bending them. Only a couple of things left to be done, one of them being the suspension. You have a few things to set up, is how much air you have in your air spring, that is the compression damping, and the third thing usually available is the rebound damping, which is here at the bottom of the right leg. If you have rear suspension, the setup is no different than setting up a fork. New suspension needs a break-in period, so you'll have to revisit these dials later on. But for starters, what you want to do is set up your compression here to fully open. This is usually all the way counterclockwise. Mine has 3 positions, so counterclockwise to fully open. Then you would have to set up the right amount of air in your air spring here. You have this little O-ring to setting up sag. If you don't have that little O-ring, just use a zip tie, just wrap it around it. SRAM and the newest Fox forks provide a little sticker here giving you some guidance on how much pressure you should put on those forks. If you don't have that, just look for the serial number of your forks. For SRAM is usually here. For Fox it would be something similar to this. And armed with that information, you would usually go to the manufacturer's website and look for information. In case of Fox, they have that clearly presented here in a few tables. SRAM recently introduced the Trailhead app and online page. Is trailhead.rockshocks.com. You enter the serial number of your fork and it's going to provide you all the information about your fork, tuning recommendations, documents, and a few other things as you see in here. Armed with the shock pump, inflate your suspension to the manufacturer's recommended value, but then set up sag to anywhere between 15-20% up front, 20 to 25% in the rear. Last thing is the rebound adjustment. This is usually provided in terms of number of clicks from fully closed. So turn it clockwise all the way. Okay. Until it stops, and then if the manufacturer recommends 5 clicks, that is counterclockwise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you don't have that recommendation from your manufacturer, I would set it up in the middle of the adjustment range as a good starting point. There's books and countless of videos about setting up suspension. You don't need to be a guru to set it up properly. Start with the manufacturer's recommendations and just start to tweak it based on your needs and your feel. That's the most important thing, and this is something that you will probably be doing for the next little while. The final bike check is probably one that I would do before every ride. I always start at the back and make sure that my rear axle is tight. Then if I have a clutch, make sure that the clutch is engaged. Moving up to the saddle, you shouldn't have any play in it. If you have a dropper, tiny bit of play is okay. Coming down to the cranks, you don't want any side-to-side play in here. Obviously pedals have to be nice and tight as well. If you want to get a bottle cage, this would be the time to install it over here. As you're moving along the frame, take a look to see if there's any cables rubbing against the paint. I showed you how to check for play in the headset, especially for new headsets. They tend to loosen up a bit after a couple rides. Make sure you check that out. Coming up to your cables and hoses, some people go crazy on making sure they're super neat and tidy. Just make sure that they are looking decently and that they have enough slack. Hopefully you've already done that right. In my case, I used a couple of zip ties and a piece of Velcro. Coming down is paramount to keep these stanchions clean and keep the wipers clean. I also use this, which is Finish Line suspension spray. It doesn't attract dirt and it helps with lubricating them a little bit. So every time I wash the bike, I use that as well. Obviously you want that front axle to be tight, just like the rear one. And finally, remember to check the tire pressure. Tire pressure is very important for your comfort and your ride quality, your grip available to you. Use Stan's recommendation for adjusting pressure And don't be afraid to go lower tire pressure than you thought before. And congrats for finishing up your first ever bike from scratch. My two bikes are one all party, and that would be the Kona, more of a trail bike that ended up with beefier tires, all tubeless, that is 25 pounds and ready to play. Norco, it's all business. This one is 20.5 pounds, is ready for racing, and it has skinnier tires, and everything was done with the idea of weight in mind. But overall, a really fun project that I really enjoyed sharing with you guys. And this is the party bike 6 hours after I finished it. Was it muddy or what? The good news is the bike held out very well. It's a very good fit for the rider, and overall a joy to ride. The bad news is that I have a lot of cleaning to do, as you can see it here. Throughout this series, I referred to a lot of videos that I posted earlier, or a lot of parts that are available online. Make sure you use the links below to take a look at those. And this is the end of my little project, folks. I really hope you found something useful in it. If you did, don't forget to like the videos and subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, use the section below to start a discussion. And until next time, I really hope to see you guys on the trails. Cheers, guys. Cheers.